Welcome to Lead Up Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Harbour. Really excited to be here with you today. You're going to find out why here in just a minute. But look, on the Lead Up Podcast, we spend time with leaders talking about leadership, helping leaders out in the world grow and just get better. I'm really excited today because today's guest is someone who's had an enormous impact on the healthcare space, the industry as a whole, enormous impact on me and my leadership and the way I think about things. It's Scott Becker. For those of you who are sitting on the edge of your seat, Scott is the founder of and publisher of Becker's Healthcare, one of the, probably the most influential healthcare media platforms in the country. He's reaching hundreds of thousands of healthcare leaders, executives, physicians, and investors every single week. Over the course of the last 3 decades, Scott's built businesses that intersect healthcare, intersect media, law, private equity, and venture capital. He's nationally recognized. He has a nationally recognized healthcare practice as well. So I'm really excited to talk with Scott today because he's written a new book that's going to help you, the leader. So I want you to tune in. I want you to be ready to take some notes. But Scott's written a book called Building Great Building Great Businesses, Create Momentum, Overcome Setbacks, and Scale with Confidence. I'm looking forward to just hearing from Scott and actually getting his book, which is coming out in June. We're going to tell you where you can go get that before the end of the show today. But I know I can't wait to learn from Scott and things that he's done that hopefully will help me grow my business and my leadership as well. The book captures lessons from decades of entrepreneurial wins and losses. And Scott, I'm sure you've had lots of those on both sides of that. Today, we're going to dive into the evolution of a founder, the 5 stages of building a company, why niche focus beats broad ambition, and what separates companies that scale from those that stall. Scott, welcome to Lead Up Podcast.
Mike, it's a pleasure to be with you. I'm a huge fan of yourself and what you do. So to me, this is a total pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. You're about as good a person as they come, as good a leader as they come. And I just wish I had the golf game, 1/10 of the golf game that you or your son have. I don't know about your daughter's golf game, but I know yours and your son's are much, much better than mine. So I'm aspiring to get there. But in the meantime, we'll talk business and healthcare and whatever we'd like to talk about today. But it's really just a pleasure to visit with you. You're as good a leader and a person as they come, the best.
Well, I appreciate those kind words. Yeah, when we talk about golf, there's two types of golfers. I play golf. My son is a golfer. There's a difference, right? He knows how to score, and I know how to hit the golf ball. So that's about it. So Scott, let's jump right in. In building great business, you talk about 3 stages in the evolution of a founder. Many people start companies because they're great operators. They love what they do. They're builders, they're problem solvers, they're hustlers. But as the company grows, the role of the founder has to change dramatically. So walk us through those 3 stages of the leader's mindset and what has to change as the company grows to get bigger, because you've done that.
Sure. No, I think this is true, whether you're building your own company or leading a team at a company or whatever you're doing. I think the 3 evolutions that we talk about are probably pretty similar regardless. So we start with this concept that when you're first starting up as a founder or developing a business or career, you're in the spot where you do everything. There's the old adage that you're the chief cook, you're the bottle washer, you're sending out the bills, you're depositing the checks, you're scheduling appointments, you're delivering on the service. Think about it as a solo professional business. You're practicing law, you're getting clients, you're sending out bills, you're tracking everything. You're doing sort of everything. And the same thing in any business. My core businesses were, the big business I built was building a healthcare media company. I also built at one point a healthcare law practice and then been involved in investors and a bunch of things. But when I started either of the things that I ended up really driving forward, I was the sole provider. That's the first evolution of a founder, the chief cook, the bottle washer, everything, as they used to say. The second evolution is you start to hire different people. And those people really help to leverage you. They're not necessarily better than you or smarter than you or more gifted than you, but even that next step of starting to hire people starts to remove some of your time, allows you to focus some of your time, allows you to spend more time on what's most important. And you have people helping you do other things and sort of taking care of a lot of things so you could take care of your own mental bandwidth, your own physical bandwidth, and really be able to focus on taking care of customers and whatever you're doing really well. Second evolution, you've hired people not necessarily better than you. We view this as a 2X evolution versus a 10x evolution. You've moved to the next step. You could leverage yourself. You could do more. You could do better, but you really haven't gotten to really accelerating growth or greater growth. The third evolution of a founder comes when that founder moves from hiring people to fill out spots to hiring people that are better than he or she is, where you start to have in every department of the business somebody running that department who does a better job of it than you could ever do. So as I look at that in terms of our media company today, media company today has 30 to 35 full-time writers, journalists, and I can never run that editorial team like I did 20 years ago or 25 years ago. I don't have the talent, the capacity. The world has changed so much. So we've got brilliant people running that editorial team. That allows me to scale that without every step, me being the limiting step on every step, or me being the idea person in every idea. After you get to that third stage and you've hired people in different areas that are better than you are, now things could accelerate without you being the limiting step and everything. And that's the difference between stage 2 and stage 3. Stage 2, you're still the idea person, you're still the driver behind everything. You've got a lot of people helping you. Many of them are great, but they're not people that can drive it forward without you. The same thing on the sales side, the commercial end. The president and CEO of Becker's Healthcare today is a woman who joined me 20 years ago, Jessica Cole, and I couldn't do the job that she does today. That's not false humility, that's reality. Somebody asked me last week, what would happen to Becker's Healthcare if I left? And I said, it would be a small drop off. There'd be an impact, but the real impact is if our leadership team left. That's really what drives the business today. And we talk about this. So we think about that, those three evolutions of a founder from you do everything to 2X, you've hired people, but they're not necessarily better than you, to you 3X, or the third stage, you've hired people and they could accelerate. You're no longer the limiting step in what the company does. And that's where you want to be as a leader and as a founder. I often say we could talk about how we judge leaders, but one of the key ways we judge leaders is how well does the company do when they're gone? And so if you look at all the things that Bill Gates and Steve Jobs achieved, probably the biggest compliment you could say about Steve Jobs and Bill Gates is they built such a platform and such teams and such talent that those companies have thrived 10x since they've left, which is a remarkable thing. So two of the largest companies, iconic names, iconic leaders. But the biggest compliment from my perspective, yes, they were great inventors and thinkers, but the fact they built platforms and talent and teams where those companies really thrive post them leaving the office when they're out of the building, that's a really an amazing tribute to leadership. And that's where you want to be in that third stage of evolution to where something is better. You leave it better than you started it, and it's in better shape when you've ultimately left the building than when you were there. That if done the right way to the right trajectory is really the highest compliment to leaders trying to constantly get to that third stage of evolution, depending on what you're trying to do. But when your business doesn't thrive with a lot of other great leaders, not just you.
Yeah, that's so good. I often say the true measure of leadership is, can you develop another leader that can develop another leader? And you hit that nail on the head is, did I put somebody in place? Did I develop somebody else that can keep this thing running as good or better, hopefully, than when I left it? Scott, talk to us a little bit about, you truly are that founder of Becker's Health, but you're not there day to day anymore. What role do you play as the founder, visionary of that company now? Because you do have Jessica running it. But what role do you play now that you've
Mike, don't tell anybody that I'm not there day to day. So don't say that.
I know you're working hard right now.
Just joking. We still, what happens with the leaders, I've had two big leadership transitions in my career. One was I built up with a team of great people, the law practice, the healthcare legal practice that was one of the great healthcare legal practices in the country and still is. And at some point I transitioned that to Amber Walsh, who leads that practice, and then to Howard Bucker, who leads that practice today. And again, when you first leave core leadership, you have this great challenge of how do you continue to be impactful and positive, but not in the way of the leader, the new leader, so that new leader is do things how they want to do them. And the worst leadership trait I've seen. And again, I don't mean this as a negative. I do mean as a negative, but the person's had a great career. Bob Iger was the CEO of Disney, and he's the exact example of horrendous succession and transition planning. So Bob Iger brought in a successor as the CEO. I think someone who had worked for him. He stayed in the building, either as the board chairman or on the board. But when you're in that role and you've had somebody else take over, your job is to figure almost your line responsibility now, or your advisory responsibility now, and to make sure that line or advisory responsibility is outside of competitive with the CEO. So the challenge with McGuire Woods in our healthcare group, I stay very, very involved with a handful of people, a handful of core client relationships. I do what I do. We try and make sure that I'm out and about in the world, that we're making connections with people, but I never try and be in a spot where in any way, shape, or form, people thinking, oh, he should be doing Howie's job again. He should be doing Amber's job again. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for everybody. And quite frankly, at their age level, their energy level, they do a better job of running that group than I can ever do today. It's not even close. It's very similar with Becker's Healthcare. Jessica is the CEO. I'm not the CEO. I might have my name on the door, but I do what I do. I do a ton of podcasts every day. I do a ton of connectivity. I spent this week at a board meeting for a national not-for-profit, and I'm very proud to be involved on that board. We were in Montgomery, Alabama this past week for that. Last week, I was giving a talk at Baylor College of Medicine about healthcare trends. We try and do a lot of things that are complementary to the Becker's Healthcare brand. Plus, of course, I still run our CEO advisory board. And at our conferences, I'll moderate several sessions a day and talk to people. So every single day I'm involved with Becker's Healthcare, but my job is to do the things I do and be complimentary to Jessica. I talk to Jessica regularly, but the biggest cheerleader, I'm not Bob Iger. Bob Iger came back and went back to be CEO again at Disney and basically trashed his successor. And that's a horrible way to lead. Bob Iger is an incredibly accomplished leader. It's just a horrible example of transitioning and understanding your role once you've turned over the leadership mantle.
Yeah.
So for me, it's being very clear about here's the other things that I do, talk to the leaders constantly, but I don't really offer unsolicited advice because they're running things day to day. They're putting 100 miles an hour into it. I'm not. And so
Yeah.
they don't want my unsolicited advice. When they ask me, say, yeah, look at it this way, look at it that way, but largely they're fantastic leaders. I can't do what they do today. And I'm a big fan. I use this phrase in business, Mike, which is love your 90 percenters. And if I have a colleague that's doing 95% of the stuff right, the worst thing I can do as a leader is call them and talk about that 3 to 5% that I don't think is perfect. You follow me? These people are putting
Yeah.
so much energy into what they're doing. They're doing such a great job. It would be like, you could always say, oh, this should have been this, should have been that. Something has to be really out of whack for me to make a call like that to say, hey, we need a little course correction here.
Yeah,
But
that's so good.
we try and do it never. And if we do it, it's every several years on a specific thing.
Yeah, I'm sure you see this, Scott. In my work, leadership development and executive coaching, I work with organizations. Maybe a CEO bumps up from a COO, or a CEO retires but stays on the board. And I see this a lot. They don't give the freedom to their successor. Maybe the CEO is now leading the COO, but he's still trying to do all, or he or she's still trying to do all the COO work, or maybe a CEO emeritus that's on the board is still trying to be the CEO. You just talked about that with Bob Iger. Talk to us about what are some steps a leader has to go through to let go of the control? Because you built this thing, right? As a founder, we've built this thing. As a CEO, maybe we've built this thing. What are some things you would advise leaders to do to learn to let go and trust those? Hopefully you've hired well enough, you should trust them.
Right. Yeah, there's multiple pieces to that. One is that whenever a CEO steps down from the role of CEO, it's almost always the case, or a CEO founder sells part of their business, whatever it is, it is, there's a ton of books written in this, and I don't think people understand it quite fully until they're in those shoes and have stepped down from something or sold something. There's a huge emotional vacuum that comes from being, you were the go-to person. Everything revolved around you. Now it does not. And so that is a evolution in a really challenging period of time. They talk about so much of life of mourning, of different things that you mourn. And there's a period of time that you have to understand, I was the person running this. I am no longer the person running this. There are obviously positives and negatives with that, but you can't understate the emotional impact of a leader on that transition. So that's one piece of it. And I don't know if there's this constant sort of like making sure you're doing what you can to take care of yourself. Because the worst thing you could do in that spot is try and get your job back or try and drive your CEO crazy, meddle with everything. I think there's periods of time where probably early on in transitions, I felt like it probably might, I don't think I overly meddled, but you certainly feel this vacuum, this loss. Oh my God, I was the person and now I'm not. And it is what it is. So there's that. The second thing about leadership is that I believe in this concept is if you have fantastic people that are working on your teams and working with you, involved with you, they have to have leadership spots and true roles and responsibilities where their buckets are filled. And if you have great people, there's a timing dance of how do you work them into whatever leadership role they're working into. Because if you don't do, they end up becoming disengaged and ultimately find other pastures or end up being a negative around the company because they now are like, they feel not appreciated. They don't feel totally engaged. And so I got to the spot. I remember turning over leadership to the law practice, the part of the practice that I ran. And I did it for 14 years, which is a really long time by the standards of running a national department of healthcare law practice or any kind of department of national practice. That was a really long time. When I turned it over to Amber Walsh, who ended up being just phenomenal, lights out, great leader, and then ended up being on the executive committee of the firm. When I first turned it over and asked to turn it over, there's another thing about leadership we'll talk about in a second. The people that were the chair of the board, the managing partner, were resistant to me turning it over to Amber. And I said two things. One is, I can no longer do this job at the level I did it at, because so much of the job of being a chair of a large department with 100 lawyers, it's constantly recruiting, talking, communicating with people, dealing with people, retaining people. Just it's a full-time job. And by this point, I was already doing a handful of other things and quite busy. It didn't have the energy that I had in 14 years. The average tenure of a CEO is 10 years. I'd done it for 14 years. I was burnt on it and couldn't do it at the level I could do it at. And Amber was not chomping at the bit. She was never an overly, oh my God, I want your job now. I want your job now. It just wasn't. I was his wife. She's a wonderful leader. But it was time for her to be the leader. It was just time. And so you have to understand that in organizations, that timing. And it's very hard for leaders because if your entire identity is held up in being the leader of that, then it's very hard for you to turn it over and handle that timing right. Bob Iger should never have turned over the leadership of Disney because he never wants to be anything other than chair and CEO of Disney. He's finally again retiring from it. He probably doesn't even want to do so now, whatever age he is. It's probably just not how he's wired. But there's this fine balance. If you don't turn over things at the right time or find the right leadership roles for people at the right time, then at some point they become disgruntled or find other pastures. And so there's that challenge as well. But I don't know if I've answered your question or touched on it.
Yeah, no, it's great. You risk losing your top performers, right? And then you have to stay maybe
Yes.
in charge because now you don't have anybody to replace you. I think leaders being willing to let go of some pride and ego, right? To allow others to grow into those leadership roles is critical. Not easy to do because sometimes it's that pride and ego that makes us great leaders, right? And gives us that drive. But we'll shift a little bit, Scott, because I want to make sure we get a chance to talk about your book. You write about the 5 stages of a company, and you talk about idea, product, revenue, profit, and scale. Where do most companies get stuck in those 5 areas, and what helps them move from that stage, if you will?
Sure. No, that's a great question. Obviously, you start with idea, and so many companies never really get past the idea stage. They're not a company. So that's one. It's almost a huge funnel. Then you get to products. If you actually did with a product or service that you could sell, that you could do, whatever that might be. And then, of course, when people at that product spot, many times people spend an inordinate amount of time paralyzed by analyzing or talking to friends about the product or business versus actually selling and actually selling. Like when you first got into the full-time coaching business, you had to actually say to people, hey, my services are now available for sale. Here's what the price of them is. Here's what I do. And it's a big step from having a product or service. I have a coaching company to actually coaching is a big evolution. And you could talk to your wife, you could talk to your friends, you could talk to your kids about this one to do. It's going to be great. And they'll all tell you it's going to be great or they won't. But none of that matters until you actually go to a customer who's willing to pay you for what you do. I do a number of things that until I turn them into revenue producing, I call them advanced hobbies. It's great, but it's just not a business. So the third thing is actually getting to revenues. And we see so many companies that really spend so much time building a product, want to perfect the product, but they're almost scared of the market. And the reality is you have to go out and be in front of people and look at selling your product and doing whatever you're doing. So that's revenues. Then once you get revenues, the next place that people sort of stall is by not building a team. Because
Mm.
if you don't build a team, you're ultimately doing everything yourself. If you're a professional services person and you're booking lots of appointments, you're taking care of lots of customers, you're doing the consulting for them and so forth, there's a real bandwidth limitation. When people start to grow to that next stage, you could be profitable as a company of one. So revenue and profit go together, but you don't have any cost other than
Mhm.
yourself and whatever you have to do. But to move to the next level, there's this building of a team, which costs money. And then to get profitable, so you got to keep on generating business. And you really have to understand what is the core of what you're doing. Okay. I was on the phone the other day with the chief development officer at a health technology company, and they're constantly trying to hone the clarity of their use case. So this is what health systems are buying from us. This is why there's great cost benefit in it. And now once we've clarified that, we can put salespeople after it and grow after it because we really know what the benefit, cost benefit is to somebody. But it's this
Mhm.
next stage of building a team that many people get stalled at. And then I think the best businesses are very good about clarifying, here's what we do, here's our customer, and we're going to spend all of our time doing what we do and on our customer and not constantly distracted by new information, new ideas, new this, new that. I think there's a constant discipline of really knowing if my top 5 customers are great health systems that utilize us to help teach their teams about retention, about growth, and so forth. The great thing that a person does that's in that business is they say, let me get deeper with those customers, and let me find 2 more customers that look exactly like the customers I have. The
Mhm.
mistake that some people make is to say, I've got 7 customers in this way that are doing great work with us that we love working with. It's going great, but I really want to find a customer out here that does Y or Z. Fine, but understand if you've got a core bread and butter of what you do and what you do really well, you want to keep on doing that and then grow with those customers. Are there other things that you do really well to help those customers? We talk about not having 1,000 customers, it's having 20 that are really important to you or 5 that are important to you, whatever it might be. But constantly trying to avoid distractions, staying focused on what you do. We're a huge fan of and building teams. You talked about building teams. I think it's everything in business.
Yeah, I know. And as I've built my business over the years, chasing money is because when you're young, when you're trying to build something, right, you need the income and chasing money. But also, when I've done that, it's distracted me, right? It's gotten me out because now maybe I'm outside of healthcare doing something with a bank that, you know, leadership is leadership. It works in every type of industry or business, but it takes you away from that focus. I think it's so important. You talk about that, why niching is important. Maybe you want to go a little bit deeper there just around
Well,
your,
exactly that. Leadership is leadership, but where Mike Harbour connect dots for people is in environments that he's been in time and time again. You have a filter for, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what's happened. Here's how that has worked. And so you have a different level of value you can bring by being within the niche and being in the same synergistic area. And it's much easier for one hospital CEO to say, hey, we work with Harbour Coaching, Harbour Resources. You ought to work with them too. It's not hard for that same, especially in a mid-sized town, for that same CEO to say to a bank CEO, work with them too, and you could do great work with that. But it takes a couple times working with that bank leadership to understand, hey, here's a little bit more and understanding implicitly about how banks work and what goes on in
Mhm.
banks. So we're a huge fan of niche leadership, winning in niches, being in niches where you could create synergies, where you develop real knowledge, where you understand the business better, you could create a higher level of value for customers. There's also beauty to it personally. If I'm in a niche business where my customers of this business are whatever sector they're in, that means when I'm at a family dinner or a cocktail party or something else, I'm not selling. I'm not
Yeah.
involved in business. I'm able to be myself, do whatever I want to do within reason. I can't be an idiot. But at the end of the day, I'm not on. I'm able to say, this is not my audience for business. I'm here to
So
golf
good.
with these folks. I'm here to enjoy myself. I'm here to have dinner with Liz and family. I'm not here to sell to the next person that's at the table because I'm in this niche. This is the niche I live in. And I think
It's
there's a
great.
beauty of that for so many reasons. In business, I think it's a much more winning strategy and it's been talked about ad nauseum. The other thing is you're often competing in niches. I don't want to compete with Amazon or Microsoft or Google. I don't have the resources, don't want to. I want to compete with people in niches that are big enough where it's worth winning in, but not so big where the competition's insane.
Yeah,
We
it's good.
can't win in it. So we talk about that often. Can you win in the niche? Is it worth winning in?
Yeah, that's good. So talk to us. Let's just go back to Becker's Healthcare a minute. Did you ever hit a point as you were growing and scaling that, Scott, where you like, is this worth it? Is this going to work? What were some of those roadblocks, lessons learned that maybe you eventually got over the hump and to build it what it is today?
No, 100%. Yes. I think one of the things that happens in any business is you go from very small to mid-sized to larger. In that small, mid-sized spot, you have to decide, are we just building a really small business that provides us a job, which is fantastic if that's what you want, which is great, or are you building a bigger business? And once you get into this mid-sized spot, you have small to mid-size, you've got tremendous vulnerability because you're at a spot where you're very reliant on a handful of people. You're often very reliant on a handful of customers. You're up at a spot where you're quite fragile and the business is becoming more complicated. So there's a point in time at which you have to decide that we're going to be a slightly bigger business, whatever you're doing. And again, this is different for every business and it depends what you want to do. Many people, like, we've got a really close friend who runs a real estate practice. She doesn't want to have 10 employees, don't want to deal with it. I don't blame her. And she's more profitable having herself and a couple doing what they're doing than having a large team, which is supporting a large team and it's not turning into profits. You follow me? The decision is making a decision. Where it's really hard to be is that middle ground. If you grow to a certain size where you don't have enough depth of customers and people that you're too reliant on the loss of somebody or a loss of a customer, loss of a person, that's really challenging. And you're also at a spot in some of those businesses where you as the founder are working so crazily, insanely that you've not really built something that gives you any freedom. Like the great thing in the law practice is when we built it enough that I actually had some freedom and I had the right person to drive it rather than myself. It was sad to leave leadership, but it was also gave me some freedom. And with Becker's Help did the same thing. But I remember very much that spot when we were in that middle spot X amount of years ago. In any size business, you're still highly dependent on a handful of people, no question about it. They're what we call ride or die people, a common phrase today that you really don't want to live without ever. But I do think there's that middle point in business. It's very scary. We were small enough that we were doing good stuff, great stuff, but we couldn't build the type of team we wanted to build because we had to be bigger and have enough revenues coming in to support the type of team that we wanted to build. And that we needed to be able to have sanity too. And so there's that middle point in business. It's very challenging, I think. It's like once you get, if you're very small, it's easy. You don't have headcount to take care of, and you're doing whatever you're doing for customers, and hopefully they're loving it. There's plenty of one-off consultants that run a great business doing what they do. When you get to that middle point, you're stuck. You got to decide, where am I going from here? And you can't at some point only have X amount of customers, X amount of people. I remember early on in my practice, one of the people that was one of the key people quit, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, how do we keep taking care of customers and we keep on growing? And it was a real lesson to me. We call it, the gentleman's name was Lynn Grekus, a fantastic lawyer and has had a fantastic career. But we jokingly call it the Grekus rule because it led me to understand I can't be so reliant on any one person. So I had to build a slightly bigger business to be able to take care of what we were trying to take care of. And it's a real learning experience because you end up building a bigger business. Like you said, I didn't build it because I was trying to make more money. I built it because I needed sanity. At that point, you need sanity. You're compelled to build it, but you can't have sanity if you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. What's the biggest difference in between companies that move from revenue to real profitability, Scott, and real scale versus those that stall out?
Yeah, I think there's two things I always think about. I think one is it's a people thing. I've served on the boards of companies. One board had a ton of great leaders in the company, grew to a whole nother level. One board had a CEO who was a supernova, one of the most talented people I've ever met, but didn't build a bigger company. And if you don't build enough leaders around you, it's very hard to get into a spot where you start to figure out what is repeatable business that brings in the right level of profitability. And so you have to have the right team. I think it starts with that. Then I think the best leaders really know their businesses. At the law firm, we have a chairman and managing partner that are brilliant people and that understand our business, understand this is where we do fine. This is where we're getting crushed. And so do whatever it is. It's like in my business, in the healthcare business, originally we had really small customers, really large customers, medium-sized customers. And you find it's very hard to build a business around 1,000 customers paying $1,000 a piece because every customer needs to be taken care of. And so you'd rather have mid-sized and larger customers, and those become the anchors of your business, the cores of your business, whatever you want to call it, that you really build around. So I think the difference is building teams, really knowing your business, and understanding when you know your business, where do your revenues come from, where do your profits come from, and then constantly stacking resources around the places that are profitable and bring in revenues. Like we see many leaders get distracted by chasing idea number 12 versus focusing on idea 1, 2, and 3 that really drive their business. And so we really view it that way. It's really around knowing your business, building great teams, and constantly stacking resources over your top opportunities.
That's good. Yeah, that's great advice. Let's one more topic here before we start to land the plane. You talk about team centric and customer centered, the importance of those two things. And when I go into to healthcare hospital organizations a lot, often they say we patients number one, but then they got a team that they haven't made feel like they're number one, like they're important. And we, especially since COVID, we've seen a lot of that where people want to feel valued, and we really in the healthcare space really well. Employee engagement hasn't moved. The needle hasn't moved on that in 30 years, really. So how do we balance this
Yeah.
team centric culture with customer centeredness as a pillar in our business?
Yeah, no, I think the concept is exactly as you said. Both are total top priorities. We got to take care of our people, meaning our team, our staff, our leadership. And we have to understand that the whole job of our team, our leadership, and staff is to take care of our customers. And it's constantly being on message on both. There's this old adage in business, the customer is always right. And of course, we've learned over the years that's not always true. When we talk about businesses, I remember one of the most important spots I got to in one of my first businesses is where I could tell a customer, we don't want you as a customer. And that was a customer that was very tough on our teams. And that was a very freedom evolving moment. It's just like in a consulting practice, you got 7 health systems and one of them's impossible to work with. Where you want to be is you got 6 other ones. Like I can't come home every night miserable to my family, to everybody else, because that customer's driving my whole team crazy. So the team is really important. The customers are really important. One of the best CEOs that we see is the CEO that's the CEO of UCLA Health, Jenny Spizo. She does a wonderful job of constantly reminding everybody what their core mission is, and that the core mission is driven by their people on their team. The core mission is safety and quality for patients, is really doing great, hot quality work for patients, but it can't be done without the great team of people that they have there. She does a tremendous job of retaining and growing great teams, but it's both. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. And it's constantly, it used to say like the customer's always right, but we would have people on one of my earlier teams. You might have a customer that is your third most important customer that keeps the lights on. And then you got a customer that's your 1,200 customers that drives your people crazy. And one of the smartest things you could do, and people don't like to hear this, is to get rid of that 1,200th customer, because it doesn't keep the lights on. It doesn't even drive profits. It doesn't allow you to pay people you want to pay them. And it's bad for morale. It's bad for everything. And so one of the things in business is knowing, we always say, you got to know your best people, know your best customers. When I was really practicing law full time, we said it's a very simple business. I have to great lawyers and great people. They have to great customers and great clients. And then the whole job is to put those two together. To make sure these people are taking care of those people. But constantly trying to simplify as a leader. Here's what we're trying to do. I got great people, and our job is to take care of great patients.
That's good. Yeah, that's really the job of the CEO, right? To make sure those two intertwined really well together. So Scott, I want to ask you just a couple more questions here. If someone picked up your book, what's the one lesson from building great businesses about building momentum, overcoming setbacks, whatever it is? What's that one lesson you'd want someone to remember?
Yeah, I think of it as, it's a great question, Mike. And I go back and forth on this exact question. I think what I really want people to do is come away from the book learning a little bit, a little entertained, but most importantly, a little bit more motivated for whatever they do, a little bit more that they come back to whatever Monday is, whatever day it is, just a little more excited to do what they want to do. I'm a practical person. The book's a 200-page practical read. It's an easy read. I'm happy to send you the draft of it where it's done. It's with the publisher. The publisher signed off on the final edits now. We're done. I'm happy to send you a draft of it so you could read it. But the idea is, I'm not a big believer in didactic learning, because everybody learns because they're themselves turned on to learn. You learn something in this conversation because your mind is open to learning. It's not because I say something brilliant, is my perspective in this. No idea is come away from this with people a little bit more thoughtful. Do I want to build this kind of business, that kind of business? Am I excited to get back at it on Monday, Tuesday? If nothing else, if people come away from this after they read it, a little bit more excited about what they do, then I have succeeded in what I'm trying to do.
That's good. I know they will. I can't wait to I've got a copy ordered, Scott. I've got several copies coming. I can't wait to get a copy and review it because you stepped on my toes a few times today. I felt like you were talking to me, Scott, about especially when we got into building the team and scaling. Because look, that mid market, because I'm trying to make that transition from a small company to go into that. I want to get more into that middle market. And so when you start hiring people, it changes the whole dynamics of putting a proposal out for business, right? Because you got to think about the profit a different way and how that comes out. So I can't wait to read the book and hopefully gain some ideas.
But I'll go back to that point for a second, Mike, because everybody does what business they want to do. And what I find sometimes is the business that you're in sometimes it's profitable, and sometimes it's the very most satisfying business because you actually impact directly with clients. One of the things that founders won't tell you is that sometimes the business gets bigger first. Sometimes the business is bigger and not profitable. So you're better off doing what you're doing with a small team. So that's one. Second is, as you get bigger as a business, one of the real travesties is if it goes well, you're more profitable and you're doing better and you're impacting more people. At the same time, you as the founder end up not nearly as directly involved in client work and working directly with clients. And there's a lot that's less satisfying about that. So we're a big believer in business. You don't have to be big. You don't have to be small. You have to be what you want to be. And it takes people time to sort that out. So I don't like what you've done is remarkable, and you do remarkable work for your customers and clients. Could you do better work with 3 more people? Maybe, but then they're not seeing Mike Harbour directly as much. So who knows? So it depends what you want to do and what you want to build. But I'm a huge fan of we're very close with somebody who built a real estate team and then decided they're better off going back to doing what they were doing, which wasn't as scalable, but really being hands-on with their customers and doing fantastic work for their customers. So we don't judge one or the other. You want to build the bigger businesses and some of the thoughts around it, but many small businesses are more profitable than mid-sized and large businesses and do just great.
Yeah.
Different kind of business.
Great advice. Yeah. Lots to think about, Scott. Your work has certainly helped me over the years, and it's certainly shaped how people think about healthcare, about leadership. I've attended a few Becker's conferences. It's been a while. I need to get back up there, but I just love what you do there. Talk to our listeners real quick about your book, where they can get it, how they can order it now, when they should expect it, how they can learn more about you right now.
Sure, Mike. No, thank you very much. So the book is called Building Great Businesses, Create Momentum, Overcome Setbacks, Scale with Confidence. It's a labor of love. We hope you enjoy it. The best place to buy it, and we'd appreciate this, is to pre-order it on Amazon. We need people on Horse to buy the hardcover book. It's like $21.49. We'd love people to do that. Please do, and love to visit with anybody that wants to talk about it anytime. But it's a labor of love. We hope people enjoy it. We love visiting with you, Mike. You're about as good a leader in person as they come. The very best, and what you do for your customers is remarkable. So we are so thankful for you always being so gracious and having me on. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. You're always so encouraging. You're a guy I admire in the world of healthcare and certainly building business. And I appreciate your encouragement today. I appreciate the value you've added, not only to me, but to our Lead Up listeners. Everyone who's listening, if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe to our Lead Up podcast on YouTube or any of the listening platforms out there. But more importantly, go out today, pre-order Scott's book on Amazon. I'll make sure that we put the link, Scott, in the show notes for our listeners that they can go out and do that. But go out and order the book. Share this episode with others as well. We know there are people trying to figure out how to do business a better way. And Scott is a master at doing it. I've watched him do it over the last 20 or 30 years that I've been following just Becker. So when did Becker start, Scott? I know I've been following you for at least 20 years.
Yeah, no, we started it about 33, 34 years ago. And then we went through different transitions. So the first 8 to 10 years was really myself and an outsourced company. And then about 25 years ago, 25 years ago, started hiring full-time people. And that's when we really started to grow.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for saying yes to the Lead Up podcast and spending time with me today. Lead Up listeners, make sure you go get a copy of the book right now. And until next time, keep leading, keep building, keep leveling up. Scott, thanks so much.